Trudeau accuses India's government of involvement in killing of Canadian Sikh leader. This is the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with the system. Never going home. I'm in love.
Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed last June in BC. His killing was a murder by two masked men. So it was obviously a hit. Usually when someone gets murdered, it's usually because someone's breaking and entering, wrong place at the wrong time. Or this would be seen like a gang-related violence. But it come out in recent investigations that the government of India of involvement in the fatal shooting of the Canadian Sikh leader, a claim that will have seismic effects on the already shaking bilateral relationship. Everyone knows that Trudeau is not a popular figure in India. Several Indian leaders have already branded him a Khalistani supporter. Nijjar is a supporter of a Sikh homeland in the form of an independent Khalistani state and been branded by the Indian government as a terrorist and accused of leading a militant separatist group, something his supporters have denied. It wouldn't surprise me if he's funneled money into their more militant organizations, because the organization is very much fractured. Must be noted that the area they're claiming, Punjab, has never been a major element of Sikh self-determination, and that Sikh is more of a pan-Indian thing, historically, not centered around one particular place. And even after the 47 partition and the migration of thousands of Sikhs from Pakistan into India, the Sikhs are still a minority within the Punjab province. It should be noted that they are not a majority wherever they are. So I don't think a Khalistani state is anything, should be something to go for. I think it's a waste of time and money. India is not afraid to use violence itself. Operation Blue Star was shoved out some militants from a Sikh temple. The army came in with heavy equipment and the Sikhs responded with heavy equipment, heavy Chinese-made equipment. Where did they get that? Obviously, they smuggled it from abroad. That operation came about because the Soviets were feeding disinformation about the movement. So the movement in India itself is not as bad as it's been growing. And a lot of it's fueled by the diaspora, Indian Sikhs abroad who are funneling money into it. Canada's national security apparatus has reason to believe agents of the Indian government carried out the killing of this Canadian citizen who has also served as the president of Surrey's Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara. Whatever. Can't pronounce all that. Don't want to. Don't care. Not a great fan of Sikhism. Now you got to remember, this guy has Nijjar has been wanted in India for a long time. His property in India, so he moved to Canada, still has property in India. So he's not a poor guy. He's on India's most wanted list as far as the Khalistani movement goes. And they tried several times to extradite him from Canada back to India. Canada has refused on human rights because he won't get a fair trial and he might end up getting killed or put in prison for a long time. So there's a reward on his head, and probably two guys took advantage of that. The irony is, within India itself, the Khalistani movement doesn't have that much support among the Sikhs themselves. There are many Sikhs in the army and police forces, and they regularly help the government crush the Khalistani movement. It's out in the diaspora, in places like Canada, the United States, the UK, that the Khalistani movement has its most fervent supporters. And a lot of money comes through there, it gets funneled through. Criminals have infiltrated the organization, as have government forces, so there's no direction. It's a mishmash of groups, so it's not worth supporting. Not in my case. I wouldn't support them. Trudeau came out on the floor of the House of Commons and spoke up against it. That security agencies have been actively pursuing a credible allegation of potential leak between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He's probably got dual citizenship. So involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty, contrary to the fundamental rules by which free, open, democratic societies conduct themselves. Canada is not in the business of going off and whacking people abroad. Countries like India, even though it's democratic, don't have that same mentality. Now, when Trudeau was over the G20, he also asked Modi to participate in the ongoing investigation and cooperate with Canada to get to the bottom of this matter. I wish he'd also talked about the scam artists, all the scam call centers in India. So, both Canada and India expelled diplomats. We are the Melanie Jolie, she ordered the expulsion of a senior Indian diplomat, and hours later, India did the same thing. So it's nothing new, a tit-for-tat thing. So the RCMP is leading the murder investigation. And the World Sikh Organization, a Canada group that represents Sikh interests, said Nijjar spoke of threats to his life before his alleged murder. Well, the Sikh organization also threatens people themselves who would criticize it. Canadian journalist Terry Malawski criticized the Khalistani movement as driven by the Pakistani government during his investigation, and he considered the movement a threat to Canadians. That he had death threats all his life. Any journalists who've gone into the more violent subgroups within the movement have come up with death threats. So it's not exactly the best movement in the world either. So the Sikhs aren't exactly white themselves. But I don't like the idea of the Indian government going off and whacking somebody on our soil. But they tried to extradite him. Did this guy funnel money into India to support the Sikhs? Yes. Did some of that money go to support the more militant ones? Oh, for sure. Did he know about it or not? We don't know. So now Modi rejects Canada's allegations, calls them absurd, and a strongly worded statement accuses Canada of interfering in India's internal affairs. Well, I don't think Canada, knowing how our government works, we probably do support the Sikh organization within Canada. Why not we support the Muslim one? And who knows how much of that money gets funneled back over to India. So I can't say for sure. The Canadian government does not support the Sikhs. So there's going to be a tit-for-tat response. And if it comes to that, well, we can forget about any kind of trade deal with India right now. Unfortunately, because of our recent immigration policies, Canada is now home to the largest Sikh diaspora community. I've seen a lot more of them recently around my area where we didn't see them. Used to think they were just out in the West. Now they're all over. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. But this guy was wanted in India and as a terrorist in 2020. The RCMP should have been keeping an eye on him since then. We're just keeping him under surveillance for a few years. Would have been helpful. And there is a terrorist group within the Sikh organization. They killed Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. 2 of her security guards shot her. The Air India bombing. They're not lily white. The Sikh organization, it has elements within it that are very militant and will do anything they can. First thing off we could do is, if it really gets down to it, we could reject all immigration from India to Canada. That includes everyone, Sikhs, everything. Let's not allow it to happen. We could do that. We got enough in area already as it is. We could also kick out all the international students from India. Keep their money, but kick them out. No refunds. If it came down to it. No, I have no problems with that. And take a wait and see approach. I do not support the Khalistani movement. I think it's a dumb idea. And will just lead to further tensions along religious lines, which India does not need. As there's already lots of tensions between Hindus and Muslims and Hindus and Christians within India itself. Have known to flare up, as well as the Muslims in India. Let's keep it over there, not bring it here. But this is interesting. Trudeau finally showed some balls. So we'll see what happens with the investigation. Hopefully the RCMP can come up with something more concrete than what's been said. But of course, you never release national security documents like that, because then you might reveal your sources and someone else might get killed. But we'll see what happens. So any Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think about this. Is India guilty? And if they are, what should we do? Leave comments in the comment section. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with